So I wanted to do a video about what I feel is the number one misconception that foreigners have about the pay rate, about the U.S. And I would say salary. Salary is perhaps one of the biggest misconception that foreigners have. A lot of my foreign friends often think that we're offered so much more than they are. But in, if you consider the fact that a lot of areas in the US are very expensive, for example, in Seattle, if you make an average of 80K and above, you can live comfortably. Below that, it's more challenging, to say the least. New York, obviously, they have their numbers, Boston, Pennsylvania, Texas, etc. So, how big of a problem is being underpaid in the US? According to a Monster survey, 22 million people have been have reported from all industries, from all positions, that they are grossly underpaid. 22 million. 39% men report that they are underpaid versus 48% women. 68% of the nation, okay, like the United States nation, uh, do not make more than $75,000 a year. The cost of living, and I think I told you Seattle was around 80K and above. The cost of living is really high, especially in areas like San Francisco, and Los Angeles, etc., New York, Boston. And so, if you take into account that a lot of these positions don't even offer you enough to live alone in a in an apartment, nevertheless a supportive family, um, should kind of give you an idea that U.S. is not competitive salary wise as they say they are. Yes, now I will say there are people that are receive huge salaries, and Glassdoor does report some of them, but at the same time, that Glassdoor does report that uh, most employees are underpaid by 5K or more. Just to give you an idea, it is they do recognize it is an issue. So the problem is there's certain people who are in tech or certain industries that receive a lot of annual salary. Their numbers kind of balance up the average, but for the most part, I like to share kind of my experience in the finance industry, how challenging it was for me to even get 55K base. And that's in the Northwest. Of course, I have different bases in Seattle and Boston, etc. For example, Los Angeles, I won't accept anything less than 75,000. And I will say that, except for one company, no other company in LA was willing to go up that amount. So I interviewed with 100 multinational corporations. Okay, most of them were 100. Most of them were multinational corporations. About 95, 90% or so weren't, but the rest weren't. So companies from EY, Nike, etc. I mean, banks, you name it. I've pretty much interviewed with so many of them. And I struggled in the Beaverton Hillsborough area, in Portland area, to get 55K. Companies like EY were willing to go up, were willing to offer me 55K base pay for a position, but companies like Nike were not. So just to give you an example, I had a Nike recruiter reach out to me. He asked me, I have a position I think you're a good fit for. I looked at the position I am, actually a really good fit for. I would like to, invite you for an interview. The position, the salary base for the position is 50K. And I told him, I'm sorry, I cannot do 50K in the Beaverton, Hillsborough, Portland area. It's 55 minimum because I live in Battleground, Washington. I commute there. It's an hour and a half of traffic. Without traffic, it's an hour. But I know I go there to that region. I go to Beaverton, Hillsborough every week. So I know Uh, I know how long it will take me, estimation of costs, and on top of that, Oregon taxes. I think people often don't consider when they take pay offers or salary offers is taxes. Taxes plays a huge portion. Such as West Virginia, Virginia, New York, Oregon. I feel like they take a huge chunk from your check versus say Washington State. For example, I will accept 50K in Vancouver, Washington, but I won't accept 50K in Oregon. Seattle is a different matter, but for the most part, I base it on the regional costs. And 15 companies, multinational corporations, could not go up to my basic pay. For example, a bank in New York, I won't say which bank, I requested 78,000. I felt like I could ever, not even a penny less. I cannot go below that as the base pay for a finance position. Ideally, I wanted around 85, 90, but they had this amazing training program, and it was more entry level, and I actually went down because of it. On the higher positions, I kind of go up in salary. Entry level, I go down. Actually, I try to base it on the position as well. So I did want the role, and I felt it was a good role, and for that, I was willing to suffer a little bit. So they could not go up to the amount they said, 75K, and I said no, and I did not agree, and we didn't continue the interview process. Another company, another position that I was offered in Washington D.C. They offered me 100K, and I said no. I needed 115 minimum, just because cost of living, and I take into account that I don't do roommates. I have a hard time like living with messy people and stuff. So you definitely need to take your personal considerations, taxes, and regional living costs into play when accepting salary offers or etc. or negotiating. For the most part, I'll say it was really a challenge to get my base pay, and I wasn't even aiming very high. And I wasn't even from, except for certain cities, I wasn't even going to 75K. I was going, certain, like North and South Carolina, I wanted 55K, and they for a role with PwC, my apologies, PwC, and that position paid around 40 to 50K, and I was like, no, I'm not moving. So it is what it is. They can go up to 55K, and I wasn't willing to go for 50K. So now continuing interview process for that. Because some recruiters will tell you in the beginning, and some will after your first interview or after your first chat, and some will tell you towards the end. So you kind of have to make that decision before you even go to the interview and know your numbers. So when coming to the US, everybody is not rich. I know people with masters and PhD diplomas being grossly underpaid. And it's not necessarily based on your skills. It's just at times people want a better rate, or they want what the market, they go below the market. At times, yes, there's people who banks or other companies compete for, so they get these huge offers. For the most part, you're looking at a really fight to get below minimum living costs. And unfortunately, for the most part, it's going to be a struggle to even get like 55K in the Northwest, especially with COVID around. I feel like a lot of the companies I interview with after COVID, or say during COVID, grossly went even lower than they were offering me before. So anyway, consider those things, and just hopefully those will give you an idea how the US, everybody is not making tons of money. We're just surviving like everybody else. Okay, take care.